Let's invite to the stage Mr. Michael Conway, Insurance Commissioner of the State of Colorado. Sir, come on up. Love it.
Thank you.
I appreciate one bias. When people get an opportunity to serve, I personally like that they do something with it. And you strike me as somebody who's been very active in your space, and there are a lot of people here who are like, oh, you got to have him on stage. He's one of the guys making it happen. So tell me, what was the 2019 legislative session like for you as both a regulator and somebody who is an important thought leader in the administration on healthcare?
So thank you for having me here, DJ. It's exciting to be here. It was about probably 3 or 4 months ago I was, for the first time, called an activist insurance commissioner. I don't think the person that was calling me an activist insurance commissioner meant that in a kind way, but I took it in a very kind way. The 2019 session was busy. We got a lot done during the session. We got reinsurance done, we got surprise billing done, we got Representative Roberts' insulin bill through. And we got a whole host of other bills through as well. HICPUF led the fight on transparency bills, but we really moved the ball in a meaningful way for Colorado consumers. And that, at the end of the day, everything that we are trying to do through this administration is with the Colorado consumer in mind, the employer, the folks in the individual market that are purchasing their health insurance, trying to help them every step of the way that we're going. So the session, I think the easiest way to explain it, DJ, was that it was busy. We had a lot of things moving through. We tried to be very thoughtful and mindful as we moved those things through, tried to be as bipartisan as possible, and all of those bills that I just mentioned had bipartisan support. Probably one of the most important bills that we got through was Senate Bill 4, which touched on the alliance model that Tamara Drangsfeed is here from the Peak Health Alliance up in Summit County. But that bill had bipartisan support, probably the most bipartisan support of any bill that went through, or one of the bills that had the most bipartisan support through the legislature this last session. Because there is a real, I think, understanding that when we work together in Colorado, we can really achieve some amazing things.
Yeah. The public option conversation's been an active one here today. Of course, the comment period is just concluded. One person said to me, you know, we were active advocating on this bill during the session, or on the topic of public option during the session. We've submitted comments as part of this rulemaking effort, or the proposal. Sure. And we had to ask ourselves, is the primary goal of the public option to increase access, or is it to help lower cost? And we were not sure. Can you ask the commissioner that question? I know the answer is probably both, but if you had to prioritize one, which would it be?
So I think the answer is both. But let me back up a step and talk a little bit about the process, because I think it's important to recognize that what we just went through, what we went through to put out this proposal, the draft proposal, and to have the discussions that we've had, the over 20 meetings that we've had, the nearly 200 comment letters that we've received, that was not part of the requirements of House Bill 1004. We built that process into place so that we really heard from folks, so that we had the opportunity to listen and make some changes to what we thought was a good, or what we think is a very good proposal, but we can always improve that proposal, and that's why we built in this extra time. So that's what we've been reviewing over the last, I guess, 48 hours at this point, the nearly 200 comment letters that came in the door. But I think it's more fundamental than that for me about what the fundamental goal is. The fundamental goal is to, again, go back to what I said at the beginning of this, is to help Colorado consumers do all of those things, right? It's to help them afford their healthcare plans. It's to help them get access to a meaningful insurance product. I mean, a big piece of what we put into this draft proposal was that we want services to be available for consumers pre-deductible, pre-co-insurance, pre-cost shares, so that people don't feel like they're just paying $500, $1,000, $1,500 a month for the opportunity to carry an insurance card around in their pocket. We want people to be able to use these products in a meaningful way so that we can keep people healthy. But at the end of the day, right, a big piece of what we're trying to get to is affordability, because we know that if we can get to a more affordable place with our healthcare plans, we build in all of those things, right? We build in more access. At the end of the day, access in large part is making sure that people have an insurance product that they can use, but also that they can have an insurance product that they can actually afford and purchase in the first place. That's why we're excited about being able to increase enrollment through the public option.
I know it's only been 48 hours, but any comments stand out to you? You don't have to obviously tell us the specific comments, but are there some particular things that caught you by surprise?
Everybody loves it. No, I mean, for the most part, the comments were pretty consistent with where we thought they were going to come in.
Yeah.
There was a lot of support from the consumer advocates. They want some changes, though, too. One of the things that I think people didn't really expect that we were going to put into the recommendation was the advisory board component of it. And the consumer advocates really want us to flesh that out a little bit more than what is in the recommendation. They want us to put more meat on the bones of who's going to be on that advisory board, what that authority will be. So those are the types of things that we're working on and that we're going to be working on for the next 2 weeks. But it was a really good opportunity to hear from people about what their concerns were, what they liked and what they didn't like. But like I said, for the most part, it was pretty consistent with what we thought it was going to be.
So insurance regulatory authority goes back, 60, 80 years. And that's a pretty heavily regulated sector. It seems to me that this public option conversation begins to regulate pricing or begins to discuss benchmarking and ultimately oversight of provider reimbursement. And that this public option conversation has catalyzed that. Do you think that it makes sense, given where we are on costs and pricing, do you think it makes sense for providers, for your office, for the state of Colorado to have more direction or regulatory oversight of provider reimbursement, provider pricing, in the same way that you have extensive regulatory authority over insurance pricing?
So I think it's important to take it a couple steps back. And so this isn't the beginning of the conversation on controlling prices and controlling costs. Right, the state of Maryland has been doing that for almost 40 years rather, not 40 decades, that'd be a long time. The ACA fundamentally came in and controlled costs, controlled prices, controlled profits, more importantly, for health insurance companies. So this conversation has been going on for a very long period of time. But what the ACA didn't touch on and the Attorney General started to go down this path was the underlying cost of care. And what we have seen throughout time, since really the beginning of the insurance model back during World War II, is that our health care markets do not function like other markets. Just very plainly, they do not. Consumers don't have the ability to impact the health insurance markets like they do in other meaningful ways. So what we've seen over years is that prices, the healthcare cost component of this, has continued to rise. Even when we tried to do things to incentivize the hospitals in particular to decrease prices, like Medicaid expansion, like the provider fee, that hasn't worked. So we have to take a different approach. And again, this is all about helping consumers, right? At the end of the day, that is why we are doing everything that we are trying to do through this administration, through this great legislature, is to help consumers actually afford their health care plans, help employers be able to provide insurance for their employees, help school districts be able to actually provide a real meaningful benefit to their school teachers so that they can pass those savings back to their school teachers through increased pay, through increased benefits. So yes, we have to take a different approach because the approaches that we have taken so far haven't worked. And we aren't going to sit here and just continue to go down the same path that isn't working. That is why we are having this conversation, why we're having this conversation about doing things in a new and different way, but it's an important conversation to have. I've said the whole way through that this is going to be a very hard and a very difficult conversation, but we did not take these jobs. I don't know is Kim still here? Well, if Kim was here earlier, you guys heard her talk. She didn't take her job. I didn't take my job just to do the easy thing. The governor did not run to be elected to do the easy things. If these things were easy, somebody else would have already done them. But we are here to make change, and make change in a meaningful, important way.
That's a real clarion call. I mean, honestly, you don't hear a lot of insurance commissioners talk that way. When you get together with your other NAIC folks, do you stand out from that crowd a little bit? I know some of those guys been around a little while.
Some of them have been around a little while. No, there's lots of great leaders at the NAIC, different insurance commissioners. Jessica Altman in Pennsylvania is a rock star. There's lots of different rock stars around the country that are, and I don't mean to imply that I'm a rock star, so sorry, cut that off from the video. But no, there are a lot of people out there that are trying to do the right thing, that are trying to help people. So there are great conversations that happen at the NAIC. We learn from each other quite a bit. We learn from each other from the things that we do from state to state, and we try and build upon the different things that are done throughout the country. But no, I think that there's lots of great people at the NAIC.
Switching gears a little bit, give us an update on how your office is following up on surprise billing legislation and what you have in the works there.
Sure. So for folks that don't know, that we did pass a surprise billing bill last year in Colorado because, like I said, of our great legislators, two of which are sitting right here. So the bill effectively dealt with both surprise billing instances. So there are two kind of fundamental surprise billing instances that end up happening. One, if you end up in an emergency room that isn't covered by your particular insurance company, you can end up with a surprise medical bill. But two, the one that I think really upsets people even more than the emergency room piece is when people, when they're going into a hospital for a particular procedure, they do everything the right way, where they call ahead, they make sure that their physician, that their surgeon is going to be in network, but they have somebody else that pops into the surgical room at the end, whether it's a surgical assistant, an anesthesiologist, that ends up being out of network. And then that person, that patient, that consumer gets a quote unquote surprise medical bill from that out of network provider. So we tried to address really both of those fundamental issues through this legislation and put some caps in play, reasonable caps from my estimation, about how we would figure out what the hospital or the physician should get paid in those instances. So what are we doing to implement that bill? We're in the midst of conversations with everybody from the hospitals to the physicians to our ambulance companies as well, about implementing regulations in order to get that up and running. We've had a number of stakeholder meetings about those regulations, and we're going to continue that dialogue right up until the point where we have to finally get those regulations out so that we hit the 1/1/20 date, the January 1st, 2020 date of when that bill goes into effect.
Telehealth is this topic that has been around for a little while now, but the regulatory space is catching up. And it seems like the frontier topic there on the regulatory side is at some point allowing telehealth providers to supplant other providers for network adequacy requirements, meaning at some point you might have telehealth providers that will be in network that would mitigate the necessity of having other providers in communities be in network as a tool to bring competition in the provider space. Do you have any thoughts on how ready Colorado may be to expand network adequacy rules to be very flexible vis-a-vis telehealth?
So I think telehealth presents a lot of very interesting opportunities. The Attorney General was talking about the mental health crisis that we have in the country, in particular in this state with our teenage population. It's a very scary thing. I've got a 13-year-old teenage stepdaughter, and that's the mental health problems that we have in the state, and especially in that age band, is very, very frightening. So I think that there are opportunities for us to deal with the stigma problem that we have with mental health in particular, to allow telehealth to perhaps step into the void to help with that issue. I think that's even more true perhaps in our rural areas, where if you are a person that lives in a 500, 1,000, 1,500 person town, everybody knows everybody knows what car they each drive, everybody knows that if your truck is outside of the psychiatrist's office that you're getting mental health care. And that can be a huge stigma problem. But we can do things through telehealth once we deal with some of our broadband issues. We can do things with telehealth to really help with that front. Are we going to be more flexible with network adequacy in order to allow more mental health into the marketplace? Yes, but you got to be careful with that too, right? When you go out and you talk with the CEOs of rural hospitals, they are really scared about telehealth and the impact that that could have on their rural hospital. So while you want to be flexible, you need to be very mindful of the impact that that's going to have throughout the system too, and in particular in certain spots of the system. So like we are with everything, we're going to be thoughtful as we implement these things. We're going to be thoughtful as we try to bring more access to the system, but it certainly is, I think, with all technological issues, it's the wave, to some degree, the wave of the future.
Obviously, we still live in a time of the Affordable Care Act. Kathleen Sebelius, as Secretary of HHS, was a leader in putting that legislation together in the Obama administration. Before she was the Secretary of HHS, she was governor. Before she was a governor, she was an insurance commissioner. I wonder if you've given any thought to what you want to do next in your career.
No, I have not, and I won't. I'm very focused. So where's Monica from Connect for Health Colorado? There she is. I promised her I was going to make sure that everybody remembers that Friday is the beginning of open enrollment. So for those folks that buy on the individual market, get out there and shop and buy a health plan. So with that said, I haven't given it any thought. I am very focused on the job that I have now. So the reason why I'm very focused on the job that I have now is because of the amazing opportunity that we have in Colorado at this moment. Right? We have a governor that is very motivated to make meaningful change for folks. We have legislators that want to lead the way on that meaningful change. And this has got to be one of the prime opportunities in my lifetime where all of the stars are going to align to do that. If I had my eye on whatever was next one, I've never lived my life that way, but even if I was that type of person, then I would be missing this opportunity. And this is such a great opportunity for Colorado. I would feel terrible that I had screwed up and dropped the ball for the people of Colorado if I was doing that. So no, I have not thought about what I'm going to do next. I will not think about what I'm going to do next until I'm fired or I decide to quit one day.
Yeah. Insurance Commissioner for the state of Colorado, Mr. Michael Conway, thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.